The topic or the subject here is regarding the disruption or the electric vehicles, mobility, and its impact on the cities. Likewise, so I would try to take up things, but primarily this is something as to the kind of disruption which is taking place in the energy and the transport or in the mobility sectors. Before I go into it as to what is happening in the country, I would like to take a few examples. Some of them I am going to take one of the interesting presentations which a Stanford professor has made recently, Tony Seba. He says that how much time did it take for the disappearance of horse-driven carts by the automobiles on New York streets, on Manhattan. It took 15 years. How much time did it take for the car market share to grow from 10% to 80%? 10 years. And then again, the kind of technology disruption which we are going to have, how much time is it going to take in terms of the energy and the transportation or the mobility is anybody's guess. But by and large, what happens is that the insiders or the knowledgeable people are the people who misread the disruption or the anticipated disruption which is going to take place. What Bloomberg had predicted in 2015, 2016, the price of the lithium ion cell, currently the prices are lower than that. So friends, we believe, and we also look forward to the kind of changes which will be taking place much faster than that. And this is the issue, that to what extent we are really prepared for it and to what extent we are really going to ready for it, we are going to face it. We in the government, and the Indian government particularly, the different ministries, departments, and the state governments have taken extremely proactive steps to come forward with the kind of disruption which is being there, and we expect that the industry or the entire ecosystem comes forward with that and moves along with that. Some of the other issues, I will mention as to some of the steps which the government has taken, and then I try to relate it with what is really happening. The government of India, or we recognize that the adoption of electric vehicle, for the simple reason that we have the 15 out of the 20 most polluted cities of the world in the country. We have to look into that. We have to work for it. So we have to have the cleaner sources of the energy. Now, transportation contributes nearly 20% of the emissions. The other emissions are, of course, the power generation and other issues. Construction and the power generation are the main culprit for the pollution, but then we have to adopt and we have to work for it. And for that, we also realize that being the largest manufacturers of the two-wheelers, and even in the automobile segment, being the largest manufacturers with about 28 million vehicles being made, out of that nearly 20 million vehicles being that of the two-wheelers, we have to put focus on the two-wheelers adoption. The average trip size in India is less than 5 kilometers. The need of the people is moving shorter distances. Need of the people is to move, and with a large number of even the non-motorized transport systems. When the world or all the think tanks, all the global consultants talk about the automobile, they talk about the four-wheeler passenger vehicles. But as I said, the India is different and we had to look into it. We rightly placed emphasis on the conversion of two-wheelers and the three-wheelers to the electric vehicles, looking at it as the low-hanging fruits. We adopted the direct fiscal incentive scheme for the adoption of these vehicles. which is also linked with the size of the battery. The number of steps which have been taken and which are the non-fiscal incentives in terms of the adoption of the vehicles and the electric vehicles. And very interestingly, we took the steps where the registration fee, where the taxation on the commercial vehicles is zero. Along with that, the finance minister in a budget speech also announced certain measures which are linked with the direct taxes, like the income tax benefits and the lowering the GST and duty structures. So all these steps have been taken for the early adoption of the electric vehicles, electric mobility. Now coming to the energy part of it, we cannot ignore the need for the storage which is there, which is required for the country. For the simple reason, we have the optimistic target of nearly 175 gigawatt hour of the solar generation, which we intend to be achieving in the next 1.5 years' time. We have done reasonably well, if not very well. We have done reasonably well by having the solar generation of nearly more than 80 gigawatt hours now, and going toward the 100 gigawatt hours. Yes, the Prime Minister has even more optimistic enunciations about it when he spoke in the UN General Assembly a few months back. He says about 450 gigawatt hour in the 5 to 7 years of the time frame. So that is, if that is to be done, then it has to have the support from the storage point of view. Where do we keep that energy which we generate from those renewable sources? So you have to have the storage thing, and that also helps us in meeting the requirement of our countryside, our hinterland. Because, I mean, as it is again being projected, the investment which goes into the grid infrastructure does not pay, it does not correspond to what probably it should be giving. The usage of the grid, the usage of the power connectivity is much less, very extremely disproportionate compared to the investments which are needed. So friends, with respect to that also, if we have the local storage, local generation, local storage and the local consumption of the energy, then it also helps us, and it goes without saying, as it has been projected, that the requirement for the grid and requirement for the power connectivity through the grid structures. So that also meets the requirement for this thing, and then it also adds up to the requirement for our mobility purpose, where we also have the requirement for the battery storage. Now, for the battery storage, the government is thinking along having the direct fiscal incentives for the energy which is being or the cells which are being manufactured, by having a direct relationship between the per kilowatt hour of the cell which is being manufactured and the direct subsidy or the incentive which is being given. So we are likely to be coming out with one such incentives. So in this kind of a paradigm, now it is for us to look at as to where the things are moving, and we all, being the smart people in the smart organizations, I hope, as it says, that why do the people fail to look at the disruptions which are going to take place? As we look at it, we would be among the top, rather the top country in terms of the adoption of shared mobility within the next 10 years of time. By 2030, we would be having a very large number of electric vehicles. May not be the top country in the world, but maybe among the top 3 countries in the globe for having the electric vehicles within the next 10 years of time. And along with that, the energy mix, which unfortunately is currently 60+% in terms of the coal-based energy generation, which is very difficult to face, that also needs to be handled in our scenario. And as it has been said, friends, with the kind of research, with the kind of work which is going on in terms of the battery technologies and the energy which the packing of the energy, the density of the energy which is going to be in the cell, I mean, each cell or each vehicle is said to be moving thousands of kilometers with a single battery, then it becomes, it really becomes the entire way the people move, the entire thinking about the mobility will be changing. As it is also said by in what time, it is anybody's guess that in what time the personal ownership of the car would be at 10 to 15%, and the 80 to 90% of the vehicles would be owned by the fleet, or by the shared mobility. It is anybody's guess as to when the demand for the petroleum product is going to peak, whether it's going to be 2021, 2022, or 2025. But then again, there are various projections, various guesses about it, and the people are coming out with their thinking as to by 2021, the demand for the petroleum products should peak. By what time, what would be the price at which petroleum or the crude would be available from the current pricing of $70+ a gallon to maybe it says that in another 15 years time, maybe 10+ years of time, it will be $25 kind of a range for the petroleum products. So these are all the directions in which mobility, energy, and the entire disruption which is going to take place. Friends, it's a privilege to have been speaking here and to say a few things about as to what the government is planning and how we are moving in India. Now I leave it for the panel to deliberate on it and come out with what do they think about it on the issues and the points which I have mentioned here. Thank you very much.